Welcome to another episode of Peers Over Beers, your favorite digital and social evangelist podcast, with your industry veteran hosts, Chris Detzel. This podcast starts now.
I'm not sure I would rate myself totally out of 5. Would you, Chris?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, are we ever perfect? No.
Yeah. Right? All right. So we'll go ahead and we'll get started. So hello, everyone. My name is Morgan Wood. I'm head of community here at HiveBright. Thank you so much for joining us. And today I have the pleasure of being joined by Chris Detzel, and Director of Customer Community and Executive Engagement at Reltio. So Chris, thank you so much for being here with us today. Would you like to take a moment and introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Morgan. And like Morgan said, I'm Chris Detzel, and I am the director of our customer community and engagement at Reltio. So I own our online community, but I also own our customer advisory board and our big event. So at Reltio, I've been doing this for a long time, by the way.
Yeah. Chris has a lot of community muscles to flex throughout this webinar, so I'm really excited you're here with us today, Chris. Okay, so a quick note to everyone. So hello, everyone. Again, please be aware that you can ask questions throughout today using our Q&A box down below, and we'll do our best to answer questions at the end. We also would love for you to use the chat to discuss your community's goals, challenges. Just let us know. We're here to answer questions. I'm sure there are some helpful folks in the audience as well. So now that intros and housekeeping is out of the way, let's get this discussion started.
Excited.
So excited. So yeah, we'll go ahead and we'll get these slides up. Okay, fantastic. So first we want to set a little bit of foundation for this conversation. So Chris, when you try to measure your impact, what's the first thing that you typically think about? I know that in our preparation for this webinar, we really came back to this concept of what story are you trying to tell? And I know in our discussion, we were really keeping in mind that metrics are more than just numbers and you need to track month to month. And they also are telling that overarching community story to your members and stakeholders. So when we're having these conversations, it's really important for us to acknowledge first and foremost on our previous slide, how much breadth and depth there is to community and how this can make metrics feel very overwhelming. So Chris and I today are going to walk us through this conversation with this slide very much top of mind, because we know that measuring metrics is going to be different for each and every single person in our audience today, because your community story is unique to you. So without further ado, Chris, throughout your community career, and I know it's very robust, what metrics do you find yourself continuously coming back to tracking? And what are your go-to metrics to help you understand the health of your community and your day-to-day work? And if you could give us kind of an overview of what your community does and your mission, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, look, community is tough, but the things that I tell people in the very beginning is be kind to yourself, right? So when you're just starting your community, your community career, and the metrics that you're tracking, you don't need to, boil the ocean, right? So, the things I look at are simple and they're somewhat sexy at first, right? Like registrations. Everybody wants to know how many people are on the community. So, that's your basic metric that I would tell you, that you're looking. And I think the other stuff kind of depends. Is your community an open community? So is it open to SEO? So the type of community that we have today it's a B2B community that it's a support community, and the goal really is a lot of different things. But I'm trying to get the answer as quickly as possible to our customers. And what do they use? They use Google, to search. Everybody uses Google. And so I want to be on the first page of Google anytime they have a question about our product, period. So the metric that I look at in the very beginning is page views, which is not a great metric, but it gives you some sense of, understanding of what people are clicking. But over time, organic SEO, so that piece I know is really key at the end of the day to solving our customers' problems. So you got to have good content strategy. We can talk all about that, but
Yeah.
that's not really what we're talking about today. But I think that's you know, a good. Those are two good metrics to kind of look at. You know, for me as I kind of start these the support communities.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's so interesting too that you're talking about at the beginning those kind of sexy metrics. And in your experience, were those great traction for kind of building the hype of your community internally? What comes to mind when you're thinking of those top line metrics? Because I know as builders and professionals, we're like, okay, we know this page view number isn't exactly a conversion, but how did you utilize that?
I like to tell the story, right? Like, because especially in the beginning, there's not a lot of metrics. So 100 people are in my community or 200 people are in my community or whatever, right? So to some people, that's like, oh, that's not that many, right? And so, you know, what's the story? So, you know, what I'll do is go find and get excited about the stories themselves. So it could be, hey, this person asked this question. So in the very beginning, somebody coming in to ask a question on the community is important. So maybe taking a screenshot of that question. Or what if a customer or, you know, a user answers a question and somebody says, that's exactly what I wanted, you know? And so that's the story to say, hey, this is working already, right? So you push that out on a PowerPoint and then, hey, the metrics are 100 people are here, but it's really cool because this person is, you know, answering questions already. And oh my God, they seem to be really excited, you know, stuff like that, you know, and the little wins make them big wins. You know what I mean? You don't want to overhype it, but you want to hype it, you know?
Absolutely. So in your opinion, the metrics are transforming throughout the life cycle stages that you're seeing a really big impact in your career through like kind of the community life cycle. Could you tell us a little more about that? And I think we have slides too that you shared with us, you know, how your dashboards have changed over time. So let's take a look at your really incredible and impressive slide. Yes, this one is what I had in mind. And then let's walk through kind of your journey in building your metrics over time.
Yeah, and so anytime I'm talking to the organization or I'm talking to you know, leaders within the company, you know, I like to have the first slide it tells you everything about my presentation about metrics. It's going to tell you everything, right? So there's no secrets about what's going to happen. And so basically, you know, I'll say, hey, some key insights. 81% of our customer accounts are on the community compared to 60% last year. So this is a yearly thing. So in January, I presented this to our leaders. And I said, you know, we did 33 live shows. So shows are webinars, kind of like this, right? Webinars are very great for engagement, video content, content strategy for blogs. You can get blogs and then even Q&A. So when you guys ask me questions, what I do is I'll answer the question and then I'll push your question out on our community and then answer. So, you know, just a little tactic that is really fun. And then this last year, on those webinars or shows, I like to call them, we influenced $13 million in pipeline from the shows. And so I started measuring that, which is good, but you know, it takes time to do that. And then we have an executive council or an advisory, customer advisory council that we had 10 new members. So I have about 24 members on that. And then I kind of give people a quick view of what's happening this next year. So,
yeah. So Chris, first of all, this is so great. You're giving these key insights, your accomplishments, and then you're also showcasing your focus areas. Is this, you know, the dashboard you've always had, or is this very much your current state?
No, it's my current state, and I didn't. So it's funny, and somebody asked a question. I'll answer that here in a minute. But our CEO was like, every single person needs a slide like this, right? And so he said, look, this helps me to understand what you're going to be talking about, what you're going to be doing. And so this dashboard, or you know, this piece right here is just kind of the overview and a very, to me, very helpful to know what's going on. So everybody in the organization does this.
That's great.
And there was a question about pipeline. Pipeline is, so, you know, when opportunities are created at B2B companies, the shows that we're doing today, are affecting those opportunities. So prospect opportunity or even expansion or upsell and cross-sell type stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know
And
if
I
that
know
makes sense.
Oh, definitely. And please comment in the chat for folks who are asking about pipeline. And I'll speak a little bit about this too with you, Chris. For when it comes to pipeline, was this something that was something you could always calculate, or how did you get to the point of pipeline? Should we jump to your other dashboards and take a look at those?
Not yet. Well, yeah, we could jump to the other dashboards, but to that question, it was an accident. So
I love that.
It wasn't really an accident, but
Yeah.
it was a thought, right? So the
Right.
way that marketing kind of looks at pipeline, and I'll get into the tactical stuff, but they use Zoom, a marketing Zoom account, and any webinars that they would do, right? Like the high level thought leadership type stuff. My stuff is more technical. They'd push into that webinar, and that Zoom is connected to other business systems like, Salesforce, Marketo, and Tableau. And it's in this model or whatever. And I was like, why don't I use that for all of my shows and then have people register? And so every email, first and last name, goes directly into this Zoom, right? And then it funnels into all these other systems and then calculates the pipeline. And now I have this beautiful, and I'll show you in a minute. But before I do that, why don't I talk about this? Okay. I'm not going to go into detail about this, but when you look at this slide, this is when I first started, the first year. And these are simple metrics. Look, you don't have to show them all, but when I said registrations, new threads and replies, because that's really all you have: organic SEO, page views, unique visitors, and then, who's on the community, employees, partners, prospects, customers, all that kind of stuff. And how long does it take to answer a question? So if you can't use all these metrics, use some of these metrics, right? And especially when you first start. I mean, registrations, new threads, your platform should be able to tell you some of those things. And then some of the stuff is from Google Analytics. So, just create your own dashboard. So this is the dashboard I was showing. And I might even put like a little deal in there to say some stuff, but I would just talk to it, right? And be like, these are the metrics. And, but over time, when you go to the next slide, it kind of grew. And so the audiences I really wanted to talk to was more of our customer success team, more of our product teams, and also when you look at our partner team. And so remember that first slide, I don't have to go back, but it's pretty much said everything that this slide says. So this slide, and then if you go to the next two slides over, says everything basically that, or a lot of things that the next slide, sorry, that this says. So in this slide, I break it down even more. I say, hey, look, the highlights of today's community, we have 81% of Realtio customers have at least one person that's registered. And so as you get deeper, you need to get deeper into the metrics and who is doing what, because this is valuable information. And the last slide, that you don't have to go back, but the last slide pretty much just said, here's the data, you know what I mean? Like, but then as you get a little bit smarter, you can say some more specifics. 81% of our customers are online today, on the community, at least one. And then I could break it down by customers, partners, employees, and other, right? And people would ask about other and stuff.
So I think I'm understanding. So correct me if I'm getting this wrong or not, Chris. So you started with that slide with all of the colors, really just collecting your raw data. You're like, okay, let's get lay of the land. And then, this one. And then our next one, this is your in between. So this is, I know you mentioned it's for your customer success team. So in your experience, has it been helpful for you to have that raw data? You have that in your back pocket or your toolbox rather. And then you're able to extrapolate to your customer success team or to your marketing department, to your executives. Because I know that higher level slide, that very first one that had all the text, it was much more tailored to that executive audience. Am I understanding all of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Like this particular slide is always good to kind of push the partners and the CSMs, because they're like, oh, well, who's not on it? You know what I mean? And then I don't have a slide on that, but I would create I have I have created, these are the people, these are the accounts on the community, and here's the top 10 people, users and accounts that are actually doing things. And then I can go in, here are the accounts that aren't and that we should go after, right? And so this way it gives them some views of, because what we find is when customers engage in the online community and our partners, they're more engaged, they buy more, they retain at higher rates, the retention is higher and things like that. So
yeah, absolutely. So kind of on that same train of thought, Chris, what are the top line metrics that we've discussed so far? What metrics have you found to be the most valuable for assisting executives to understand your community story? I think that you have a lot of great bits on these dashboards. And so I think the audience and even myself would love to know, how do you go about selecting those? What's your process? So we can kind of get into the weeds.
Yeah, I think, the big things is understanding kind of like, what is the CS or CSM organization's goals and what are they trying to accomplish? I live in the marketing team, so I report to the CMO today. And when you go to the product teams, what is their high level goals and what are they trying to accomplish? And so, you kind of break it down and then you listen to kind of what they're saying, right? Like, who's on it. So if I just provided that one slide that I just showed, they're like, okay, well, that has a lot more questions, which questions are good. So you listen to their questions and you're like, it sounds like, going deeper into the accounts and the users and who they are might be even better, although that takes some time and effort and things like that. You start realizing, all right, this is what they're saying, this is their goals, and this is what they're trying to accomplish. How does community relate to some of that? And I won't be showing this today, but when I look at FY for us 2024, I'm trying to do more of that, right? Like, I'm trying to say, hey, look, how do I go deeper into their goals and how do we work together? So instead of just saying my strategy is a marketing strategy, I now have some marketing pieces. I have some customer success pieces. I have some product pieces. So it doesn't matter what department I'm in, because we touch almost every part of the organizations.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? So. And I think that's what makes community so riveting and really fun to work in, is that you are touching so many different components. And for folks in the audience who are also maybe in education and higher ed, or are in the nonprofit sector, or maybe are speaking the same with product, think about this as working with different departments. So what Chris is saying, he's working with CSMs, customer success managers. He's working with marketing teams. So ultimately, when it comes to building out your metric dashboard, Chris, it sounds like it's a very collaborative process where you're maybe meeting with these teams and asking them, what are your metrics? What are your goals? And then identifying for them how community plugs into that. So I think we have some slides on this. And so when we're identifying these metrics to executives, we really want to keep in mind, it sounds like, Chris, who, what, and why. And so Chris has all of the most awesome dashboards. And I think as we're viewing these, Chris, would love to hear the story behind how you're getting to this point, how you're identifying those and building those inroads. Because I think, speaking for myself in the start of my community career, these were pieces that I was struggling to put together. And over time, I think it becomes more natural. But for folks in the audience who said, hey, I'm brand new to metrics, which heck yeah, this is going to be a fun journey. How do you go about that? What type of conversations are you having? What have you found most helpful in having those big conversations with executives and making sure you're bringing the most value while highlighting community value too?
Yeah, so many questions there, Morgan. So I'll talk about this because I think it's important. And when you do like a webinar like this, so you have, it looks like 160 people that showed up to it looks great. It's awesome. So, the beauty about that is, what does that mean? Why is it so important to have webinars? Well, we're doing this webinar today, so hopefully people can learn about metrics and how to talk to their stakeholders about metrics and things like that. And so as I kind of look at, and the value for Hivebright is that, hey, all these people came to this webinar, and what does that mean? Just because you came doesn't, I mean, so what? You get 159 people. That's great. That's a great, sexy metric.
Yeah.
That many people came to your webinar. But what does that mean for the business? And how do you translate that to the business? And so I've done just that. I do these webinars all the time. I have one tomorrow, right? On different topics. I go deep into our product and deep into things like that. And so what I try to do is translate that out to one, influence pipeline. So are we affecting revenue? And by the way, this slide was stolen. The look and feel was stolen. So, I just take it and use it as my own. So you don't have to recreate it all the time. So don't invent the wheel. And so I want the marketing team and the sales team in this case to know that community webinars or shows, because I like shows, webinars are boring. And so, that's another thing. You can recreate different things. But we did 33 live shows last year. What does that mean? That means we had 2,500 overall attendees. We had 1,100 unique attendees. So, and you're going to get this too. We had over 270 new registrations on community, not last year, just since June 2022, because, trying to get the metrics from that was hard. So I was like, we had 160 prospects that showed up from 2022 on the community, right? Like this is not, and so this is bringing in new business. This is bringing in existing business. This is bringing in pipeline and expansion kind of stuff, right? And then I put in a couple things that I didn't, couldn't learn, right? Like too many shows on the same topic in a if you did it 3 times in a row, or did that a few times, brings less people. Doesn't mean it's less interesting. It just brought less people. So that was interesting. Maybe we kind of move that around and do it, 2 months from now or something like that. And then there's a key indication that product adoption could lead to expansion. Meaning, if you don't know what that is that if I own a product, I go deeper into that product and I buy more, is really all that means. So, and then I put some key actions. Let's continue with the technical shows. Let's add more shows on features. When Reltio comes out with new products or new features, let's do a show on it for an hour, because people want to hear about it, because our stuff is complex. It's hard to use. Let's teach them and show them. And then add more thought leadership shows to our technical community. What does that mean? If I did thought leadership shows, meaning instead of this technical stuff, let's do a few kind of high level shows that talks about, data as a, more into the thought leadership stuff, right? And then getting CTOs or CDOs talking so we can bring more prospective customers into the community.
Absolutely. And I'm so excited to hear that, because I think I'm, reflecting on this, and it sounds like this could be a model for most approaches. So, thinking about our communities here at Hivebright that have alumni communities. So that type of engagement of, maybe you have a new program coming out for alumni, having a methodology like Chris is saying of, hey, how are you actually touching all of these parts? As a team, you're most like, as a organization, as a team, you're moving forward with all of these initiatives. And correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but then you're taking the more tactical approach of saying, okay, I see our initiatives and here's where community is touching all of these points. Here's how we're moving forward. An example in the nonprofit space could probably be fundraisers or that big campaign push. So really thinking about what it is that your community's mission is and really elevating it. Does that sound right to you, Chris?
Absolutely. That's exactly right. I love how you just sum that up.
Fantastic. So oftentimes, Chris, community professionals find themselves in a spot where they feel like only hard numbers can help qualitative data to be, the hard numbers typically can drive the story of community. Yeah. So how have you seen the qualitative data in your experience be leveraged in either in your own community, in the community space? What are your thoughts on qualitative data in telling community story? Because I know we've been talking a lot about numbers and looking at these really specific dashboards. Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you pull up the slides here to the next one, I guess slide 11, is that the data is good. And people want to see it and they understand it, but at the same time, it's more of the story, right? Like to me, it's more about, all right, what do these metrics mean, and how are people engaging, and what does it even mean? Who cares about all them? Because eventually, if I kept showing that every single time, people are going to get bored. It's just, I mean, it's
Yeah,
interesting to me because I
right.
think, oh my God, look at this.
I
But a
mean,
lot of people, I mean, maybe as a community nerd, it's interesting to you, but it's not always interesting to all audiences. Okay, so how are people engaging more? What are they doing? And so what I like to do is tell the metrics because it's important. What does that even mean? And so now I can tell the story of, our customers are leading roundtables. They are coming, they are connecting. Community-led on-site events with customers and prospects are a hit with them. Thought leadership topics reaches executive customers and prospects. And technical topics reaches our customers, partners, and bring out a ton of great discussion. And so I even put in on the bottom right, I don't know if you can read it, but a customer said, hey, this is really awesome. Thank you so much for this kind of stuff. And so what you need to do is take some pictures, right? When you do these roundtables, when you do these shows or whatever, and then when people email you some really cool things, show it. These are the important things. And if you go to the next slide, the other thing that I would say is very much similar. It's like the Reltio Executive Council, which is part of our community. It's an advisory board. They're doing case studies. They are speaking at events like Gartner and Forrester on our behalf. Google is coming to our shows. Click, the CDO from there, is coming to a show and presenting his case study. And people are networking together, and they're just loving the community. They are engaging. Our customers are talking about us at events and telling their stories. It's so exciting. You know what I mean? Like, so, that's the storytelling, and hopefully that makes sense to everybody else. But I think, you've got to be excited about what your community is doing. You've got to tell the story, and not just the metrics. All the metrics can be really great and everything else, and an important part of it. But I think the other piece is that storytelling. So
Yeah, absolutely. And if we can go back to the previous slide. Yeah, absolutely. So Chris, I love this example so much because back when I started, my journey in the community field, it was by accident. And so I think a lot of us can relate to you becoming community managers, maybe accidentally, or hopefully you're really enjoying the space now. And one tip I wanted to give to kind of capture these moments that Chris has here is create a brag folder for your community. So what I mean by this is have a folder on your desktop and have your screenshots ready. And when you see something that you're like, oh yeah, this is making me nerd out. I am so excited. I can't wait to tell Chris about this on my team. I can't wait to go show off this to, like what is something that just lights you up as a community manager? Do that every day if you come across it, and then over time you're going to have this toolbox that you can go back to when executives are asking you, so what? Because oftentimes when we're talking about metrics, we're having to balance these two pieces of both the really hard numbers that are contributing to the overall business value, no matter what industry you're in or where your community is tapping in. And then also that really near and dear part of community management, which is this magical moment with your members. So Chris, when you're thinking about this with capturing these moments, do you have any other best practices for just kind of identifying these?
Such a good point, because I love the smile folder somebody said, and I love what you call it. I use LinkedIn, right? And so the beauty about LinkedIn is I can push it out on LinkedIn. And then I can go back later and take a picture of that. And then sometimes I can even show the business, like, because the business loves it when you talk about Reltio or whatever company that you're at. I mean, they should love it. Let's just say that. And then two is like, I can go back and just take screenshots of these pictures. Like one of those LinkedIn's wasn't even from me. It was from one of my colleagues that did it and showed the pictures and everything else, right? So, and even going back and looking at those. So I use LinkedIn as kind of my, thing, but yeah, I love the thing is with folders and stuff, if it's on your business laptop or whatever, and then let's say, at some point you don't stay and then you kind of lose some of that. So I just don't lose it.
Absolutely.
So,
And I love that strategy too, Chris. Do you find that your community members also are kind of following along on LinkedIn?
they do.
What type of interaction do you typically see with this? Because I think as community professionals, you have a really great point of how are we showcasing externally as well, and showing these stories and to also attract members in a lot of ways. So what's your experience with posting information like this?
I'll tag people. And they'll say stuff in the comments. Any customers that are pretty engaged on our community, I'll link them in, and then I'll like their stuff. But you'll start seeing over time they'll comment on like this guy Frank. He even commented on my LinkedIn post when we were in Houston, and he was like, "Oh yeah, this is awesome. This is great." And so seeing that is really cool because then you can also go to that brag folder or take a picture of that and then showcase that later down the road, right? Like, hey, our community members are engaging, they're excited. He said so, or she said so. You know what I mean? Right here, here's the, like those little things are become big, right? Like that's your goal should be to amplify the message of your customers or your community members to the business, right? And so that's part of the story. That's what I try to do. Not always perfect, but you do your best and be excited about it. That's like the most exciting thing I've ever seen, so.
Absolutely. So going to the next slide, where you had the showcase of the webinars, I had a question for you.
Yeah.
So let's say, someone in our audience might be thinking, okay, Morgan and Chris, I hear you on the LinkedIn, I hear you on the brag folder, but just this is not resonating with me. My company in this hypothetical, maybe doesn't want us posting on LinkedIn, or maybe they don't value as much of a screenshot. So I just want to kind of pay a nod to that, because I know sometimes that is a tricky situation to navigate. So wanted to kind of have you talk about this showcase, and then also a little bit about collecting maybe feedback post your shows and testimonials. Like, what are more formal ways that you can showcase the qualitative aspects of this?
Yeah, after every show that we do, webinar, there's a survey that pops up. And I always encourage before or right when the show starts, because I have a little, thing that I go through every time. And at the end, I'll try to remember, hey, don't forget to take the survey. So that's one. So you always get feedback. And in that, how was the show? And then that's a must. And then there's two kind of open things. One that says, if you were to change anything about the show, what would it be? And then what are some additional shows that you want to do, right? And so, you just have 3 questions. They're very simple. And then you get, if 100 people show up, then I probably get 15, 20 responses. That's good enough, and then I'll take some of that and I'll say, hey, customers are saying they want this. You know what I mean? And then, I think that when you look at, what was the other question? Sorry.
Oh yeah, no, it's good. So when you're looking at this qualitative approach, so you have your after shows, do you do member testimonials? How do you really elevate these in a more formal way? So like outside the brag folder, outside of LinkedIn.
Yeah, I think one is just really asking that we do now have a customer marketing person, and she's going to be kind of, we'll work closely so that she can get testimonials or quotes or whatever it is for the business. Like I have relationships with a lot of these people. Every person that you see here, like I have a relationship with. So the guy at Google, Matthew Cox, we go to lunch, he lives here in Dallas. And so, the beauty is I can go to lunch with him. He loves this place called Papado's seafood, Cajun seafood place. And so we'll
Yeah.
go do that. This guy, Joe, he's the CDO of Click. And so, he's on our executive council and he's done many things. I just ask him, hey, will you do this thing? And it's like, yeah. And so it's not extremely formalized. We are trying to do more of that. Sometimes I feel like, when you formalize it, it becomes a lot harder to actually get people to do stuff. So, I just ask, like I just say, hey, Matthew, would love to do a data quality show with you. And then I'll have one of our experts on and, what do you think? Yeah, let's do it, man. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Like,
Yeah.
and so I
No,
think it's just
I
the
love that.
relationships that we do for community is the key. And I wish there was some easy way to get people to do speaking type engagements. To be honest, it's not easy. But when you get it, you have to show it. Like this was all public, so it's not like, I'm telling any secrets here, or showing anything that, shouldn't be shown, like Google did a case, it's out on our YouTube and community, right? Like you can listen to it. Joe DeSanto's Click case study, you can listen to it on YouTube and our community and things like that, like, and then, I think you kind of push some of that to be into the business. So, how do I get that on the main website? How do I get that, how do I, get sales to use it as kind of a, tool for prospecting and things like that. So, I think, they're doing that, they're using these things. And that's really the key at the end of the day is these are tools at the end of the day, when they're already recorded and done, but it's also me building these relationships personally,
Yeah.
and I can tell you how important that is building as many close relationships as you can with these really important people, your customers, to make sure you can get some of these things done.
Yeah, absolutely. And for folks who are new to community, we often will refer to this as ambassador programs, champion programs.
Yeah.
Chris, I know this is your executive council. So it's going to depend on your community and it's going to depend on your specific use case. But Chris, I think you hit the nail on the head is how can you really leverage relationships to spotlight? And I know someone in the chat, I think it was Melissa, said that people within the community love a spotlight. And I couldn't agree more. They love seeing their
Absolutely.
members succeed. They love seeing those champions and feeling that sense of belonging and that connectedness, if you will, for what the community is currently doing and where it's headed. So, Chris, this has been such a phenomenal conversation so far. Are there any points that you wanted to hit on? We can also start to answer questions from the audience. I know that your community is so robust, so I just want to make sure that you're sharing all of the knowledge that you want to in this space too.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I don't know that I consider it robust. I mean, I feel like we've done a good job, but there's always room for improvement. But I would say this is be kind to yourself. Metrics are hard. It's not an easy thing, but continue to push yourself to be better. You know what I mean? Like we have to be better and sharing the value, and we have to tell those stories, to make sure that there is value, because you're doing a lot of things like engagement tactics and content stuff and all these things to engage them, but doing those is not enough. Telling the story and the metrics is what's going to be key to your business stakeholders. That's just we're doing this for a living. You know what I mean? And so we're not doing it just because, some of us do it for fun. I have, some Facebook running kind of communities and things like that, but but when you do it for a job, that's the reality is that they want to know why it's important. And so you got to tell them that story.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, with this being a maturing industry, you hit the nail on the head where, this is something that we have to show the value for. And it's often, other departments have had that, that longer curve to mature and have that. So I know you have that marketing background and you're throughout your journey, how have you seen, the background that you have in marketing help transform your understanding of metrics and how to tell that story? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and let's be honest, I was not in marketing
Oh
until
my.
no worries. Usually I was in kind of a customer success, customer
Okay.
kind of organization. And
Yeah.
just a little over a year ago, I moved to marketing. And
Oh,
so
okay.
I've had to kind of translate. So you have to adapt. So my thought is that, going to marketing was actually very difficult, to be honest.
Yeah.
And because what I cared about is going deep into the product, getting them to understand the product better, become advocates of our product, to become, what do you call it? The deeper you go, the more that they buy, the more all those things. I just wanted, in a sense, training and things like that. But then, when you go to marketing, you have to, all they care about is new business for the most part, right? And
Yeah.
so, how do you look? You still got to do what you got to do for community. You got to make that valuable for your people, for your users. But, you also have to translate it. Like, how do you become a team member on the marketing team? Because, you're just not going to, get they're not going to understand the value if you're not translating into, like, for example, what I did, I translated it into influence revenue and did some other things to show that, community is contributing to our pipelines,
Yeah. Absolutely. And I saw Sylvia in our chat. I think she and I instantly connected on this with adapting. What you're saying is that
Yeah,
you need to
exactly.
adapt to that concept of whatever team you're on. So when you joined that marketing team with your community, is that sort of the sense you felt when you're building out these dashboards, you're adapting to their existing system? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, it was well, let's go back. Like, when you think about building dashboards, you're talking to a lot of people or a lot of different parts of the organization. You've got product, marketing, et cetera. So that part didn't change. I still wanted to teach things. So, but what I wasn't doing a good job was the marketing piece. Like, how am I contributing to case studies? How am I contributing to pipeline? How am I contributing to, some of these roundtables and getting speakers and things like that? Because community can contribute to all those things. So what I tried to do was bring that to more life, and it was a struggle, and it was just a mind change. But I'm getting there, and it's just like you said, adapting to it was stressful, but you have to adapt, and you have to, I mean, it is what it is. When you now report to the CMO, how do you get your CMO's attention, and say, well, okay, that didn't work. He didn't care about that. Maybe he'll care about this, and so just got to keep adapting. And I don't know,
Yeah.
it's always a challenge.
Absolutely. And so to kind of throw in different industries too. So I got a lot of my chops in community management and nonprofit world. So what this looked like for me in my experience was thinking about each department and how I was speaking the language of that department is sort of how I internalized it. So thinking about how fundraising needed to understand community, thinking about how communications, the comms department needed to think about community, the executive. So, really, I think it's that over time you learn it. When we think back to the slides about, that first one where it's all of the color blocks and it's just the raw data, you can really see your journey, Chris, of how you adapted over time and were really starting to distill and understand your team and understand what it is that they needed from you and also what you needed from them.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So we'll go ahead and we'll jump into questions. And Chris, I'm going to put you in the hot seat.
Let's do it.
I'll ask the questions and then
I'm nervous.
we'll tackle them together. Okay. You nervous? So our first one is there such a thing as collecting too many metrics?
Yes.
What's your TLDR on that?
I think that, again, you have to look at your business. So it's okay to have all your metrics and study them for yourself and look at things you need to change and do. but not everybody wants to see all those metrics, right? So I have a whole I have a ton of metrics that I'm looking at in the background, and sometimes I look at them, sometimes I go, it takes me a couple of them, but I take them and push them into an Excel sheet. And I know exactly where they are when I need to kind of look at it. And every now and then, maybe once a month, every couple of months, I kind of look and study and think, oh, I probably need to do a better job with that. But don't show all those things to people. That nobody cares, to be honest. They don't. I mean, it's just too much. But you should look at your own metrics and have kind of your own little dashboard on the side that maybe nobody else looks at. Maybe it's just you. But just remember, the metrics that people want to see is kind of what they care about. And so kind of put that in front of them.
Absolutely.
That's what I would do.
Yeah. And again, back to that adapting concept, absolutely nerd out about all of the different ways that community, transforming your business. But again, it's about adapting. It's about distilling that information.
And listen to your stakeholder. What do they want? Learn. You're not going to be perfect. It's okay. Nobody cares, but just learn from what they're saying,
Absolutely. So our next question, Chris, is over to qualitative data. So do you have any tips for collecting meaningful qualitative data? What is your processy maybe? Any tips?
I mean, I think you learn as you go. So I'll give you an example is one of the things that I thought would be helpful to our customer success organization, the ones that deal with the customers on a daily basis, is that instead of just saying, hey, this many people are in the community, I would put the top 10 companies and the person at the company and what they're doing, right? These are the most engaged people at this company, right? And then they're like, oh, well, that makes sense. Okay, they're engaging more. And so that resonates with people. So just to say, this company is really engaged. So what?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They care. I mean, and that's a good metric to show. But can you go deeper into that for that particular team? And I think, you just have to think about, how do you go deeper? And I don't know if that answers the question, but that's how I kind of look at it is I just learned. At first I was just putting the company and I was like, well, I wonder if this would be interesting. Show it to people. And sometimes it doesn't work out, something you thought was really cool. It's really not. People are like, okay, next. Okay, well, that took me a long time to do, but okay,
I feel that so deeply. Yeah. And Chris, I think that's such a good point because it's a lot of trial and error. One thing we like to say at Hybrid is that, you're doing your scientific method of community. You're going to try something out. You're going to see how it feels. If it doesn't land, that's okay. Keep going. That's what other departments are doing too. Yeah. I think oftentimes when you're
it's a journey.
Yeah, it's a journey. Oftentimes as community professionals, we tend to be a one-person show. And as our industry is maturing, we have to get used to that bounce back. Okay. Yeah. So I think that's a really great point. Okay. So our next question, Chris, is have you ever worked with a new executive or leader who didn't know what the goals that they wanted to accomplish? And if so, how did you work to help them define those goals? So do you have experience in that?
Well, look, they've got to have their own, an executive is most likely, is going to have their particular goals. And if they don't, that's a problem on them. You know what I mean? I want to help them. Honestly, that's not your problem to solve is with but your problem to solve is how do you relate your goals into theirs? Is there an opportunity for the product team? What they care about is product adoption, and getting people, can I help them do that? Yes, I can. We can do shows, we can do blogs, we can do a bunch of different things that will help our customers adopt the product better. And so maybe explaining those kinds of things and giving them examples about how community can help solve some of their problems that they're trying to solve. We can help with community. You're not going to be able to solve their problem, at the business level of trying to create their own strategy, but you can help integrate your strategy into theirs, or say, hey, this is where community can play a part.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I think you have such a good point of like, don't take that on. Let's instead, let's
You're
reflect.
already doing a lot.
Yeah, you're already doing enough. I mean, remember the iceberg we showed at the beginning.
Exactly.
So I think, a tool for this, and we'll include this in our follow-up after this show, after this webinar, is a really awesome resource created by Jenny Weigel called the Community Roadshow. And she does a great job of really showing how to have those conversations and what questions to be asking. And it is more towards the tech space, but you'll be able to hopefully adopt that to, let's say, if you're in education, nonprofit, commercial, etc., you'll be able to adapt that to your own needs. So again, don't take on more. You already are doing enough, but do think about the ways that, let's say that this person is the CMO or they're the CTO. How can community connect with them? Okay, so last few questions, Chris. What are the major 365 member applications and how do they differ from each other? Does that resonate with you?
What are the what? What's the,
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, maybe in the chat, if someone can, if they don't mind following up on that question, and we'll get more information on that and then we'll come back. Could you talk about tracking impact as a tool, one, to ensure sustainability, and two, to inform decision makers to continue, oh boy, we have a lot of questions coming in, awesome, to inform decision makers to continue or stop the community. So I think what this person's asking is, when your community is on the chopping block, let's say, unfortunately, you're at that crossroads, how would you advise this person to show sustainability and help the decision makers ultimately decide to keep your community?
Sure, you're gonna like my answer on this, but if you're already on the chopping block, it might be too late, right? Because they've already made their decisions. With that said, when you go back to all these things that we just talked about, it's a journey, but you have to be impactful in your metrics and your storytelling from the beginning, right? Like, how do you continue to optimize your metrics and your storytelling to those specific departments? So if I said, look, $13 million in pipeline is a lot, just on those shows, you're going to cut community, or, hey, we have people, speaking on our behalf at Gartner's and Forrester's and things like that, and you're going to cut community. If you already have those stories and you already have those metrics, then it's a lot more powerful to go back to your stakeholders and say, it's not a good idea. You know what I mean? Like, but if you don't have that, you might actually be in trouble there, right? So, but, not to say it's all gloom and doom, just make sure you start doing that now, right?
Yeah. And I know, Chris, this is a point that when we were getting this whole deck together and this conversation that we were talking about is what the underlying reason for metrics for folks who are new to it is, so you don't wind up there. And
That's
so
right.
Because we're a maturing industry, it's really for showing that business value. It's for underscoring and highlighting all of the work that you're doing. So as tedious as it can feel, as much as that is already on your plate, it's essential to start thinking in this way, because ultimately those decisions, if you do wind up on the chopping block, like Chris said, if you're able to point to these stories, if you're able to show the impact to revenue, you're going to be able to be in a much safer place. Granted, it takes time. And so as long as you're communicating with your executives and you're showing them that you're working towards this goal, you're going to be building that trust, that resiliency within your own team and understanding of your community. All right. So Chris, that was a heavy one. So let's end on a fun one, which
Sorry.
is, no, you're good. You're good. It's the reality of metrics, right? So the last one, which I'm really excited to hear, is what's the proudest brag in your community brag folder, smile folder, LinkedIn? What type of brag are you most proud of in your community career thus far?
Yeah, look, if it's all about the people, right? There's three or four things that I look at is the customers that are actually participating and engaging and things like that. So I push that out to LinkedIn and, and to presentations and things like that. And that's a lot of fun to see them. But two is the employees. The employees are the key part of our customer and partner community, right? When you think about as much as they're engaging, and that's not even their full-time job. I mean, it's not even their job, but to get them to do things that they might not normally do, they're key to answering questions, to doing technical shows, webinars, whatever, to, even coming on. This one guy came from Boston to Dallas, Texas, which is, like really far, and
Yeah.
to do this roundtable with me, because he's a smart dude and he machine learning and some other stuff, right? And so he helped host a webinar. So getting employees engaged in that way is really something I love to brag about, because yeah, I had something to do with it, but they're the ones, providing the content, providing the engagement, with our customers, because our customers and partners want access to these technical people because they're so smart, right? They don't want access to me. I'm just trying to coordinate it, and trying to get them, to get together and talk about smart things, and so that's what I have to brag about. Our customers doing a bunch of stuff for Reltio, but also, our employees. It's been an amazing ride and journey.
Oh, that's so lovely. I love this, Chris. So unfortunately, we got to wrap up.
So many more questions.
There's so many more questions left, but folks, thank you so much for asking these. We'll follow up with resources. And just looking at the clock, sadly, we're out of time. So thank you all so much for the questions, for being here with us today. Chris, once again, thank you so much for sharing your insights, your expertise, your community journey with us. To all the folks in the audience, like I said, we'll be sharing the recording of this show, of this webinar, by email. If you have any questions,
Love it.
go ahead and please hit reply to that email and just let us know. A survey link will be dropped in the chat, so we would super appreciate it if you could give us a minute and give us your feedback for today's webinar. Many thanks. Thank you so much. And it was so great to talk about metrics with you, Chris.
A lot of fun. Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.